Hello and welcome to another WeAreDevelopers live from scorching Berlin. Dan is not going to be with us today because he has a family emergency that he has to look after. So all the best to his family and all the best that everything's sorted out. But I've got two great people here today for the show, which I've been pursuing for quite a while. So the first one is Harry Roberts. He's coming to us from Leeds in England. And Tiffany Conroy. And she's also coming from England because you might have seen that there is a bit of a Britishism thing going on here at this show for some reason, mostly because I lived there for a long time. Most of the people that I know there live there. So, Harry, what do you do? Who are you, and what do you do?
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Well, I'm self-employed. I'm a consultant. I work in site speed, web performance. So it's my job to help clients all around the world find and fix site speed issues. That's been really popular the last few years because of Google's Core Web Vitals. I've been doing it for over a decade. So generally looking at things like improving the user experience, the customer experience, improving conversions, all that kind of stuff that is a result of having a faster site. As developers, we all know that faster is always going to be better.
Well, yeah, most of the time, yeah. Tiffany, how about you?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm based in Berlin, but I blame the heat for you mixing that up because it's hot here. I'm hiding at my friend's house. Yeah, so I'm a developer based in Berlin. I don't have some. I've been working kind of. What do I want to say? I'm an engineering leadership coach, but I was recently doing a full-time gig being a hands-on developer again, which was like a very exciting time to be a hands-on developer right now when you were stepped out of it, because I feel like the industry is going through like a revolution that has a level of like energy and excitement that I haven't felt for like 10 years. And I feel like that's happening right now. So I've been doing hands-on development, doing LLM related chat bots and things like that. But my main thing right now is I'm an engineering leadership coach, mainly for sort of new first-time engineering managers, helping people transition from that hands-on role into the leadership role. So that's what I'm doing. Like I said, based in Berlin.
Cool. Yeah, and you used to be with SoundCloud, one of the.
I was one of the earliest people at SoundCloud. I was there for 11 years. I did a lot of different things there. I was everything from front-end developer, full stack, product manager, designer, and then eventually was a VP of engineering before I decided to quit and go solo. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I don't know why I put you into England. It's just basically.
I'm telling you, it's the heat.
Nobody should be in Berlin today. It's like, 36 to 37 degrees outside. It's now 39 degrees in my flat. Excellent. No. 30.5 degrees, but 39% humidity. So that's already good. I told you before, the fun thing is my neighbor has no voice control, like no volume control. Basically, whatever he says is very, very loud, and he sits on his balcony. So if you hear somebody in the background speaking Arabic really loudly, it's not a takeover. It's just my neighbor. So not to worry about that kind of thing too much.
Hey, Tiffany, can I ask real quick? Are you currently self-employed then? Are you a leadership coach independently? Very nice. Cool. Yeah. I didn't initially realize. Very cool.
Yeah. So I was independent with a business partner, and then he decided to move to the UK where it's cooler there. And so then I've been doing full-time work or part-time work combined, and now as of yesterday, I'm back being on my own.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
Good work.
I mean, seeing that the tax system in Germany is such a pain, you need an advisor anyway. So you might as well be a freelancer. It's always fascinated me when I came back here. I'm like, Jesus, what is going on?
But I don't have my German citizenship yet, but I feel like with all the bureaucracy I've done, I've earned it. So. Yeah.
Well, there's probably going to be like a special competition, like you have to like punch holes into something and file them and fax things, and then when you can do that within 20 minutes, then you can start with the German citizenship. I mean, I never gave up my German citizenship, although I lived in England for that long, because there was back then you couldn't have two, so you had to give up the German one to have the British one. And I didn't see any benefit to it, because German citizenship has its benefits. You can walk into Brazil without a visa, into Turkey as well. So that was really always good when the Americans had to queue up, and I was just like, just going already there, having my coffee while there was still queuing up for the visa. So that was an interesting bit. But other than that, like paying the taxes is the downside of the German citizenship compared to the British taxes. But it's let's not complain about that too much, because
I don't want to talk about taxes.
Old and horrible people. That's not going to be a thing. Cool. So instead, I collected a few things to talk about, a few resources that we can have a peek at. And the first one, which kind of was an interesting one, and it keeps coming up, is like every few weeks we have a new record DDoS attack, and Cloudflare just had like a 7.3 terabyte per second DDoS attack that they blocked. And it makes me wonder, like, is there even a chance to run your own server if that's the kind of stuff you have to be against? Like, I hate having to go to Cloudflare when I go to lots of websites, especially when I'm on a VPN and they ask me to put a CAPTCHA in. But it seems like they're with that amount of amassed information and like botnets out there, it's almost impossible to maintain your own server, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a client. I won't name them, but I would say 90% of people watching will have heard of them. And they're they're an international organization. They're not political in any way. In fact, they're really quite neutral. But they're always a target of DDoS attacks because of kind of who they are, and they're not the UN, but it's not a million miles from that kind of sphere. And they were just getting repeated DDoSes. Like it was really availability. The site was down all the time. So they just moved to Cloudflare very recently. So maybe they're a big part of that 7.3 terabyte figure. My client has just moved to Cloudflare for this exact reason, because their site was just falling to its knees, once a week.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that, like, when we were at SoundCloud, we had obviously DDoS attacks for sometimes political reasons, but one of the things that we would get was just spam attacks, right? It's because someone who's really unprofessional is trying to generate hundreds of thousands of likes and follows for people. And so one of the things we had to manage was, it's not just that you can just put yourself behind a CDN, because these are, hot generated things. So that was always a challenge to kind of continually be fighting off this like pests, essentially, who could sometimes accidentally take over. But when you're a political target, where an entire government can put their energy behind you, sometimes if you're a known political entity, maybe it's understandable. But when you're sort of like, why would anyone attack SoundCloud for political reasons? It becomes hard to explain to people.
But there was a big flood of AI-generated music on SoundCloud, wasn't there, lately? That basically a lot of people created bands that didn't exist and basically put them up on SoundCloud and also on Spotify. I mean, there was a huge influx of like generated bands that had millions of views. Basically, people played sound companies out there with like generated things for clicks, and that felt like really weird. That as soon as you have something open where people can upload and publish things, somebody will script that and flood it.
Yeah, and I think, like, I don't know about the specific incident you're talking about because I haven't been at SoundCloud for a couple of years, but I think one of the things that SoundCloud has done to sort of promote them against somebody like the other streaming services is something called this user-based royalties, where the fraction of royalties that you can receive is based on the proportion of your listeners who pay money. So for example, if you had 10 people listen to you and all of them paid 10 euros a month, you would get 100% of their revenues if they only listened to you. And so if you're instead getting a fraction of a pool and none of your subscribers are paying any money, you're not able to siphon money off of real people. And so the purpose of that wasn't to prevent this particular kind of abuse. It was actually meant to say, if you're a fan who's paying money to listen to a specific artist, you kind of hope the money is going to them and not to some fraction of a penny to some hot pop star that you don't ever listen to, but it does inadvertently protect against that kind of abuse, because unless you're putting money into the system through I mean, I guess you could do money laundering, not to give anyone ideas, but that's a way to protect, like you only get revenue from the real users.
Yeah. So Chris, you talked about the Cloudflare capture, and it just says literally like click here to say you're not human, or check here to say you are human. Sorry. And I think we all know how those work, but for anyone who doesn't know exactly why, if you think about that, that's so easy to script a bot that says, oh, the Cloudflare checkbox has come up, just click that and then pass through. So what Cloudflare do is they actually look, and most of those captures just look for a human-like mouse movement and like a human-like click, right? So we all know that's how they work, and that's how a really simple UI actually has a lot of quite elegant tracking behind it. A client of mine years ago, before any of these captures or any of these defenses used that sort of human-centric nature of, because most clicks would happen at a different place on a button each time, or if it was a real person. So I had a client who, they weren't DDoS, and this is really quite an unusual attack. This huge sort of community website, again, I'm not going to name them, but a lot of people will have heard of them. They kept getting banned from Google Ads. Google Ads kept saying, you're clearly running, like you're farming your own ad views, you're farming your own clicks for revenue, you're cutting your ads account. And this was it was the majority revenue generated for my client. And they were trying to tell Google, like, we're not clicking our own ads, like we're not. And Google said, look, we've got so much data saying that blah, 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 this page gets visited, or these pages, this ad gets clicked. And we saw a heat map. And it was literally every single click was the same 1 pixel on an ad, which was statistically impossible for those to be real clicks. They had to be bots. So what me and my client sort of ascertained was that it's actually an attack. So Google were trying to sort of say, well, we're cutting your ads off because you're farming it yourself. But what we'd realize is, because we did a heat map, like a heat map tracking of the page, and every click was on the same 1 by 1 pixel. So we could ascertain that, yes, these are being farmed, but not by us. Because if we were going to get our ads cut off, we'd just stop this shady exercise. And that was before there was elegant sort of like trying to work out whether it was a human or not. And it was just like, it was a really similar thing to how Cloudflare works, but in reverse. They were getting an attack where the competitors were trying to just deliberately make it look like clicks were being farmed, which they were.
So they were trying
sabotaging, basically.
They were sabotaging them. Wow.
Trying to get you blocked from Google. That's a very clever way of doing it, because you actually, that is much harder to get out of. Like, blocking an attack is one thing, but like trying to convince a company that it's not you doing the horrible things is much harder. That's always my answer when people go like, oh, well, I've got nothing to hide. So of course you got things to hide, because if a half-truth of yours comes out and goes into another context, then you have to defend yourself against it. Like, basically, you're a scammer. I'm not, like, but it could look like this. I mean, I've been posting at my heyday of like with Twitter when it came out so much that people were saying like, you're a bot, or you have like people in the basement that actually post for you. But it's an interesting one. I remember a long time ago, I saw a button on Amazon, I think it was, or on eBay. It was on eBay, and it was not a single image button, but it was like 26 different images in an HTML table that basically were all that did click tracking that way. And you're like, image maps were there from the very beginning. Like, why do you do this? Like, a map element. A map element on the image would give you the X and Y coordinate that you clicked on the image without JavaScript. That actually worked in HTML3 too. Yeah. But they actually instead they had like lots.
Did you find out the reason? Was there a reason? Was it just an awareness of the image map option?
No idea. And the other thing that they also did, like back then, they showed like, you had to show advert or advertisement as a text under it. And instead of having that as a text in there, because ad blockers would recognize that they had it in like 12 different spans that were all positioned somewhere else in the DOM, and then positioned absolutely
and brought back together
and put them together that way to make the word advertisement. So humans can see it, but the computer would not recognize it.
When I was at SoundCloud, I worked closely with the sort of trust and safety team, and it was always an interesting time when we would see a kind of attack happening, and you'd have to sit back and be like, what could they be doing? Why are they doing it? And like, you had to be able to protect against these kinds of esoteric attacks, you have to have these like really twisted approaches to things, like
second guessing.
Yeah, and so like the people who kind of work in that area, they really come up with some, you're like, would anyone do that? And like the question is, what wouldn't anyone do? Like
These are great
Yeah.
testers, aren't they? I remember Spotify at the beginning when you intercepted the feed and basically just the HTTP stream and wanted to download the MP3 and with curl or whatever on the command line, they would detect it and then send you a telephone number and an HTTP header to apply for a job.
Yes. Yeah.
I absolutely love that. That's basically like, get the people that try to play with your system and pay them for playing with your system. How about that? Like, not a bad idea. But
I
when
don't
you
know if
talk
people
about
are still we're hiring in the console as well.
Yeah, a lot of people do that, although they don't hire at the moment.
I've heard it's picking up.
Well, the big ones don't, but the smaller ones do. So I think, and I'm going to write a talk about this at a conference in August about where I'm kind of done with looking at the big players to be like something we should aspire to. Like, oh, these people at Google and Microsoft and Amazon and Meta, they're actually the best people to work for. And I'm like, I don't think they are anymore. I think they're a great way for your resume to basically start job jumping and get like, if you're in America and you're in the right city, you can make a lot of money by going from one company to another within a year. But as somebody not in the epicenter of those things, there's probably better companies to work for that they can learn more, have more interesting things to do. Because I mean, I don't know if I got it in there, but there's this whole thing about like even like HR companies say like now 80% of their job is done by AI, and I'm like, yeah, but that shows how boring your job was and how terrible it was to code that kind of stuff. Yeah. So you shouldn't have done it in the first place. But it's tricky to. Everybody dreams of a job at a large corporation. I worked at 3 of them, and I'm done. I'm not that interested anymore.
Yeah, same. So it's interesting that it's not the big ones that are hiring. Yeah, it's the smaller ones.
Yeah, or the mid-level ones. And of course, startups are a great thing to do a lot, but you also get burned out really quickly. And I mean, I still got shares from companies that don't exist any longer, because back then it was like the big thing, like, okay, we're going to go in the market in half a year and please work during the night to make that thing happen. And you're like, no, not anymore. I'm sorry. Give me money. Yeah. I mean, Harry, you're really pragmatic about that as well, right?
About money or getting paid or
basically like trying to go to a company and make your I mean, you've been freelancing for decades now. Is it your thing, or don't you want to work for a big company?
12 years. So I went independent really, really early in my career. So I've been a developer 17 years, and I've spent 12 of those independent. I worked for a startup in the UK. I worked for a mid-sized agency. I worked for a huge betting and gaming company. Then I went and worked solo. I never take equity in companies because, like cash. I once worked for a crypto company, and the founder was great. He was funny. He didn't always intend to be funny, but he was funny. And he said, "Oh, Harry, do you mind if we pay you in Bitcoin?" Now, in hindsight, I should have said yes, but I didn't. I said, "Oh no, just like cash." And when I meant cash, I meant don't pay me in shares, don't pay me in just money. I just want money. He thought I meant actual cash, and we were in Tallinn, Estonia, and he said, "Okay, right. What time's your flight? I'll get my PA to go and check the safe." And I was like, no, not actual cash. I don't need notes of euro.
I just want money, government issued currency.
Just something I can spend today. No, it's so that was the closest I got to getting paid in anything other than just regular payment.
I mean, you could have made the choice to buy Bitcoin with your cash. That's on you and me.
Yeah, it's all on me. The whole thing's on me.
Yeah, but the point is that you can choose what to invest in with your cash, as opposed to one bet and they're in charge of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like when there's birthdays and you give people like vouchers for different shops, and you're like, you could have given them money. Then basically it's not dependent on one opening time at a certain shop and these kind of things. It feels like the weird thing to gift. But I mean, the only time where I've done it is basically where people know that they want to go into that store, could never afford it. So I gave them some money to actually go into that store, buy the thing they wanted to have with the money that I have on that voucher. But in general, it always feels like a less convenient thing than just cash.
I mean, that's what you need to do. You need to say it's exactly that. They touched an item in the store. It's a little bit out of their budget, and you're like, I know what you want, but you wouldn't buy it for yourself, and you want to pick the color yourself.
In the UK, and I don't know what the equivalent is in other countries, but in the UK, we used to have a store called Wilkinson's, or Wilko for short. Chris, you'll probably remember it. And Wilko is really budget sort of household items. So it's always students when they move to university for the first time, they'll go to Wilko and they'll buy cups and plates and cutlery and all the stuff they need for their first ever flat. They'll buy the cheap stuff from Wilkinson's. So I saw this young kid, obviously 18, obviously a student, and I can only imagine his grandparents gave him a £50 Wilko gift card. And he obviously thought, I don't want to spend it on knives and forks. I want to spend this on something cool. So he went to Wilko with his £50 gift card. And with it, he bought a £50 Amazon gift card. He just went to the register and just turned his Wilko card into an Amazon card and then left and then spent it on whatever he wanted.
That's a smart kid.
I once ordered a MacBook to be put together for me in America because they're much cheaper than in England back then, and in San Francisco, because I knew I was going to be in San Francisco for 2 weeks, and I'm going to pick it up there and then take it home and pretend it's old to put a sticker on it so I don't have to pay any tax, bring it back to England. And back then, it needed a zip code on the website to actually put that in, an American zip code, which is numeric. But of course, my British postcode was N42XX. So basically, it's like got letters in it. So I bought it with a random zip code and then went there and picked it up. They emailed me, your laptop's ready. And I went to the San Francisco Apple store and said, like, oh, I'd like to have my laptop, please. Here's the email. And they're like, yeah, but we couldn't bill your card because of the wrong zip code. Basically, the zip code validates the credit card, so that was not possible, and I couldn't enter the British one that would have validated the credit card. So I ended up like, okay, so what do we do now? And they're like, well, I don't know. So I for 1 hour, I talked to like 3 managers. Then I was on the phone with like Apple in Cupertino, and the only way I managed to get around it was actually go online with my credit card and buy myself a $2,500 gift certificate for Apple, and then use that gift certificate in the store to take the laptop with me.
No way.
Speaking of money laundering, this sounds like money laundering, right? This sounds like something that a thief would do.
Amazon gift cards are actually big in the money laundering industry, I heard. There's actually a big thing that basically like online video people get paid in Amazon gift cards so they don't have to pay any tax on anything on that. So that's a thing that is actually happening. And I wonder how they defend themselves against it. Now, let's talk about our accolades here. Performance hero Harry Roberts. I saw that yesterday. Like, how do you feel about getting these accolades? I always feel weird when somebody calls me a hero or something, but
that fun? I don't know. I think it's sweet. It's a thing they do. So I'm not the first. I'm not the only performance hero. I'm really good friends with SpeedCurve. I've been using their software for maybe pushing 10 years now. But yeah, Cliff and I, we've become really good friends as a result of that. So we had a little sit down. I was sat exactly in the same place I am now. But yeah, this is really sweet. This is really nice of them. I actually didn't know this was going to happen. So we sat down and had a talk about SpeedCurve, the product. SpeedCurve just tracks your real users and the experiences they have on their sort of websites. And I don't know, it was really sweet. I thought it was quite a nice touch. It was a bit kind of like, I don't know, like watching your own conference talk back maybe. But I thought it was sweet. I really like it.
Cool.
So I read through some of these quotes that they have lifted, and I wanted to ask you about one. Is that good? So one of the things was headless commerce and headless content are great for the developer experience and terrible for the user experience. I mean, you've probably covered the content there, but what's the summary?
Yeah, so I think that's I don't know. I was thinking of actually pinging Cliff about this because that's a gross oversimplification of what I was saying. Historically, years ago, we would say that backend time, like time to first byte, was never really the bottleneck, and most users feel slowdowns on the network in the browser. I'm seeing a slow shift away from that, where backend times are becoming a problem, specifically in headless stacks or distributed architectures. So it used to be in the olden days, your database server and your app server were the same box in the same room. But nowadays, if you've got an e-commerce site where your content's coming from a headless CMS, your product data is coming from, I don't know, I don't know what the tool would be, but it's all coming from loads of different HTTP requests.
And those themselves are services that themselves have backends that are microservices. Right,
exactly. So that was what I was hinting at there. I wasn't saying that headless CMS is bad for the user experience. I'm saying that if a headless CMS makes your pages slower, then that will have a knock-on effect on the user experience. So it was a very tenuous link that they tried to put into one sentence.
And when you see that, what do you recommend? Do you recommend just like aggressive caching?
Yeah, sort of statically generating any pages that you can do. So building sites ahead of time, especially for product pages where most SKUs, most products don't change very often. Most pages don't change very often. So build ahead of time where you can. Cache very aggressively. Modern tooling is making this a lot easier. I just don't think people are embracing it as much as they should do. And then things like when we've got people say that, oh, we've moved personalization to the back end, so we don't have to do it in JavaScript. So, well, actually, that's just moved your problem to somewhere way more expensive, because now you've got an intermediary which checks a cookie, which then says, oh, actually, this needs a different database call, so we can't use the cache response. We're going to rebuild it entirely. So every unique user is just getting cache busted. So I'm like, it was actually faster to do it in JavaScript.
Right. So people should think about where those hops are and where the caching can happen and what doesn't get cached and so on. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that was a huge oversimplification of what I was saying.
But it got me intrigued, right? I would have watched it and been like, oh, okay.
Bit of rage bait.
Yeah. I mean, this tail latency might matter more than you think is kind of paying into that one as well. Like basically like seeing that, analyzing your whole front end to back end actually makes a lot of sense. And there's this replacing client-side JavaScript SDKs with WebAssembly components at the edge was on the Fastly blog the other day. And I'm confused about this. Like, I mean, I've given up on a lot of JavaScript events over the years, because every talk was about like, here's the library to end all libraries and make your life easier. And the next talk was like, here's how to optimize your website so we don't ship as much JavaScript as we do. So we put the kitchen sink onto the web product, and then we actually write a lot of extra scripts to get rid of things that we don't need and do like only critical CSS and these kind of things. And you're like, how about we stop throwing the kitchen sink at everything to start with? That might be a good idea. But it seems like convenience goes over everything else. But I remember, Harry, when we talked in Poland the other day, that you said a lot of customers of yours, I guess it was you, were basically saying like, we don't want to use React, but we have to because we can only hire React developers right now. Has the community become a self-fulfilling prophecy in this kind of case?
Yeah, I mean, it's the problems are it's multi-layered. So Facebook created React. Everyone wanted to emulate Facebook, so everyone started using React, especially in scenarios where they shouldn't. React itself is now kind of a legacy bit of software. It's not really, it's not really suitable for the modern web. But companies were like, well, we've got a React stack. They may have put NexJS in front of it. So companies started hiring for React. So then people started spinning up boot camps for React. So people went and just learned only React. They never learned web development. They never learned HTML, CSS. So we've got an entire ecosystem where it's like, it's a bit of a standoff. You've got companies that are only building in React anyway. They can only hire in React, so it just continues that trajectory. I'm seeing companies adopting Next.js, and obviously Next is an alternative. entirely inappropriate stacks for what they're doing. E-commerce sites built as single-page apps. It's just ridiculous. But because all anyone knows is React, or nobody wants to work in Magento, which is understandable. But people just think, oh well, I don't want to use boring tech for a boring site. I want to use cool tech for a boring site. And then, I mean, I get the emails in the end. You know, it works out for me just fine because I get to go in and fix it. But it's when I don't know if it's got the same saying overseas, but we say putting the cart before the horse.
Do you think too that, I mean, this is something I've been wondering about, was just how hard will it be for a new, better, slimmer framework to take off when there isn't years and years worth of Stack Overflow for the Gen AI to ingest? You know, like, are we able, like, something I've been thinking about is like, are we able to give a boot camp to Claude Code about, you know, this is the new framework? Because right now there's a lot of autocomplete that is based on this like corpus of practices we've developed over the last decade. And I wonder how hard it's going to be to break in. It's like how PageRank was amazing, and then it made it difficult for brand new sites to get noticed. And like, I'm wondering about that. Like, we are entrenching ourselves into what we've already done. How are we going to make sure we stay able to break out of that?
That's so interesting. I haven't thought about that. Yeah, that's so
Think
interesting.
about that a lot, yeah.
We had an accessibility and AI live event last year, and Laurie Voss was one of the speakers, and he was actually talking about that we have a problem that the LLM ingestion and how long it takes actually to train and weigh a new LLM model means like a lot of information you get as autocompletion will be like 2 to 3 years old, and the newer stuff will not get in. I guess MCP and RAG in front of it would actually work against that. That's one way of working around it, but that always means that people have to then subscribe to that one as well, or access that beforehand. So there's a lot of like old information being brought out there. I mean, we have the same problem with CSS. We have the same problem with new JavaScript features. Sets are hardly ever recognized by autocompletion, and instead they use arrays and then objects around it.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting problem. And there is actually a post here that was talking about that I was taking a look at as well with the SEO in practice, like getting your content into Google and ChatGPT. And I think this is the new problem. Like, how do you get your stuff indexed, and how do you get how do you know about it? Like, how can you? I mean, with Google PageRank back then, you could have your XML map. You could actually point the Google crawler to the things that you wanted to index. But with LLMs, you actually can't, because they're just Wild West going through the internet and hoovering everything up. But that's a real issue right now. And again,
I think figuring out how we constrain them, because you know that is the role of the developer right now. I feel is, you know, okay, you've generated some code. How do we constrain it? And I think what you're pointing at is like, we're going to send these LLMs out, these well, not LLMs, sorry, but like crawlers out to kind of digest what's out there. The maker of the site should still be able to craft like some focus, you know, and I understand the abuses that this is all trying to get around, but there needs to be human guardrails on this stuff, not just for safety reasons, but for like usability reasons, so I can get at what I'm actually interested in.
I mean, that's the problem with these AI summarizations anyways. It's like hitting I feel lucky in Google. It's the first result. And I mean, years and years working tells me the people who paid the most will be the first result, not the most upvoted one or the best one out there.
Yeah. And are people going to start writing messages to the LLMs, pointing them away from their competitors? You know, how is this going to all play out?
One thing I find interesting is I've got over a decade of original research on my blog, like 250 articles. Most of them are quite long form. And it's like, I spent a lot of work on that. And I don't want someone to just ask ChatGPT a question and ChatGPT just says, oh, do this. Because they're notoriously bad at giving citations. You have to pester them for citations. So what I've done is I've blocked In an attempt to protect my IP, I've blocked, using robots text, I've blocked all AI bots from any of my blog post pages, but then said, well, do you know what? If I want a client to find me, I hope they can find my homepage, my about page, etc. But what I've started to realize is that my impressions have gone up, clicks have gone way down, exactly what it says on screen right now. Impressions have gone up, clicks have gone down. The amount of traffic I'm getting is way less. So I'm wondering, am I also getting penalized because maybe search engines are like, well, we don't have access to as much of his stuff anymore. Google bots got complete access, but the AI bots don't. And I don't know. I'm just sort of like being a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but I'm wondering, would it be in the long run safer for me to just give all my content away for free, even though I never permitted that? And it's already happened. It's too late. Would that get me back higher up the rankings? Because if you look at my my traffic, the decline in organic clicks is just, I don't live and die by SEO, but something's changed. And that headline there speaks to me. When impressions rise, but clicks don't.
I think the problem there is that most search engines now don't give you actually the URL anymore. They just basically give you the content, as you said, like in a summary or in a chat interface, rather than just sending you to the page at all. So people will never go to your place. They just get basically a cached version in the search result page of the provider, like both in Bing and in Google at the moment. And I think that's a real issue for the web, because it's the idea of like updating the resource, like the idea of a URL to go somewhere and to find the information. I update my blog posts from 2005, 2006 from time to time, just basically because they should not be indexed any longer. But I mean, as I don't know what was cached by the LLM or by the system and what was weighed and was upvoted, I have no idea which of my really outdated information is out there. And you're right. Like, how do we get the impressions back to get people onto our products? And it's not because we want to make money and show them shitloads of ads. It's just because we want the content to be able to live and breathe and be changeable for us.
Absolutely. I also wonder if the companies that are providing these services, Google, etc., if they're biting the hand that feeds it. You know, what is the motivation for you, Harry, to keep putting out content for the world to read if it's just going to be sucked in by them and not ever be a benefit for you? And at what point is there going to stop being experts generating current content? You know, how it feels short-sighted.
I mean, I
guess I think it's the AI arms race, isn't it? So I think it is short-sighted. It's like, we need to do something with AI. Let's do this, and they're probably going to, cannibalizing their own ads model. Now Google aren't sending people through to food blogs or top 10 things to do in Berlin. They're getting it in there's going to be no ad impressions on the resulting click. So it's cannibalistic. Like, they must be sacrificing ad revenue.
Well, all of them put ads in their LLMs now, in their chatbots. So they even control them better. So what they don't do is actually share the ad revenue with you, but just show their own ads. Much like the first search result pages, by now the first 3 pages are ads. They're not really content any longer. I mean, the other day I was buying a polo shirt, and I put in the name of the shirt, the number of the product. And instead I got like 15 different offers to be like, you might like those as well. And you're like, just tell me it's not available at the moment. I'm fine with that too. Just don't give me random crap that I don't want.
It's very clear what I'm looking for.
I booked a hotel in the wrong city because my friend had sent me the name of the hotel. I put it into Google. The name of the hotel was in the link. I clicked it. I was like trying to get the last room, blah, 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 blah. I get the email. The name of the hotel isn't what was in the link. It's in it's in Italian instead of in like Swedish. And I was like, what happened? Turned out that the ad that came up had the name translated to look like this other. It wasn't a chain. I booked a hotel in Rome when I wanted to book it in frickin' Stockholm. Because I clicked on the link that had the name of the hotel I wanted.
So I was on autopilot the other week, and I was just thinking about I need to sign up for a Dynatrace account just to check out what their performance tooling looks like. So I just Googled Dynatrace because everyone just Googles stuff, right? Or Bings things. 3 people Bing things. I just Googled Dynatrace, and New Relic had paid for the #1 ad, and they put Dynatrace in the title. So I was like, oh, there's Dynatrace. And I was completely on autopilot, because if I'd have just read, I would have seen that, oh, I am now on the New Relic website. But I just saw Dynatrace as the #1 result, clicked that, clicked sign up, made an account, and then I got an email saying, from New Relic, verify your email address. I was like, New Relic, what? And mine was my fault. I wasn't paying attention.
Now
But if
imagine you spent
just,
350 euros on a hotel room, you couldn't get a refund on.
That sucks.
Both of those are dark.
My friend went in my place. He had a great time in Rome.
I mean, both of those are dark patterns and should be illegal. I mean, like,
and who looks bad? Not Dynatrace, right? New Relic looks bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, New Relic.
I mean, this is really. I mean, this is like naming your things, and I mean, this is also when companies become very successful. When Google was always saying like they don't want people to say Googling for something, because then it becomes copyright free and anybody can use the name Google in everything. Like when it goes into Webster dictionary, it becomes common use word, and it's not a copyrighted term any longer. And that's when people get like, that's where Bing, I'm going to Bing something never became a thing, because it just sounds silly. But the Google thing, because they had an issue with that. Hoover was the same problem, or like Tesa, like the Band-Aid kind of thing. Like, yeah, Xerox, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we talk about like how we have issues with that, but then imagine you're like Reddit and stuff. Like they had like 20 years old now, and Reddit is basically being scraped to death by like LLMs right now, and they're trying to do their own AI stuff. And yeah, it's really tricky to sort these things out and making sure that only the content gets indexed and not just shown with ads around it. But we had that in SEO for years. I mean, I've seen my blog copied about 50 times in like random languages with like other banners around it and like more ads around it. That's been a thing for quite a while. But now I think it's more insidious, because it's not being displayed on the web any longer, but it's actually sucked into an LLM and then showed into a chatbot. So that's the weirder thing about it.
I thought they had sold their... Didn't they originally sell their content to one of the LLMs?
They did. They allowed for indexing, and I think that was the problem, that the other ones got it in there as well. And again, that's where Cloudflare is trying to do something right now, which is just announced that they have a marketplace to let websites charge AI bots for scraping it. And that's basically what you said, Harry, where basically you fine-tune in your robots.txt, hoping that LLM bots actually care about robots.txt. And they actually say like, okay, this is a one place where you could say like, I have this data on my site and I could make it available to you if you pay me for accessing it and indexing it.
I think this is the right direction.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a simple licensing / copyright issue. It's no one would run a TV ad with someone else's song without getting that cleared. But I don't know why companies like OpenAI think, oh, Harry's written loads of stuff, we can just churn that out to someone else without crediting him. I don't know how we ever got there. But the thing is, it's already happened. So you can't put that back in the box now. And I can't sue OpenAI. It just really, I think the ethics of it has really annoyed me, because I've poured so many person years into those blog posts and articles and original research. I think mine's just more of a moral outrage than anything else.
I mean, I'm basing what I'm about to say on like a half-read headline of something I barely remember. But I seem to recall that there was this idea that OpenAI was like, well, we need to do this in order for it to get challenged, and in order for there to be a licensing model, because there isn't one. And I think like, you know, something that people didn't understand again about SoundCloud is that there were no licenses for the kinds of content that people were creating and putting on SoundCloud, that there, like that type of licensing didn't exist. It was all one-on-one. And so I believe I heard somewhere maybe this idea that like without doing the thing, there can't be a court challenge and there can't be an establishment of a licensing style. So, you know, this is where it feels like, you know, something we've seen in the AI industry is like all these ideas come out, you hear about it, and then like 8 months later, it's a thing or not a thing. And like, going in the direction of putting a price on what is my content worth to me, and then allowing this to be a trade, it feels like directionally the right thing. Whether it works, I don't know. Obviously, people are going to have lots of feelings about the open web and how it's one thing for the web to be open, and it's another thing to like take the content and have a derivative use without any compensation. So, this feels directionally like, you can't pay somebody who doesn't have like a storefront, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you
Correct.
say,
Yeah,
this is how you can pay me, this is what I think it's worth, maybe we will establish an actual exchange. As an anti-capitalist socialist, it's not necessarily where I'd want to go with things. Ideally, you would just feel like you're a contributing member of society and all your needs are met, and maybe we don't have to worry about all this stuff. But that's not the world we live in.
Well, it might be. I mean, the way things go. I mean, I see a lot of stuff basically where we said like it's trickle down economics coming in a tech world as well, and it doesn't happen any longer. Like, I mean, there was a case where another post that I haven't put in there is like where somebody said like, as Harry, you said like, I can't afford to sue OpenAI, but like Reuters can. Like these kind of people. Like there's a big issue with smaller companies just basically getting a group of lawyers by the large corporations, then basically give them an email and say like, well, you can try, but no chance,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was this also that zlib, that pirated PDF EPUB library of books that basically was around for like decades, where horrible people who don't pay publishers actually downloaded pirated ebooks to read them on their mobile phone. And this one was indexed completely by Perplexity and by others as well. Like you can see like the half badly scanned EPUBs with like typos in them showing up in LLM results. And that was a big thing as well, where basically torrents and like pirated stuff was indexed by them just to have content in there. So at least this would make it more of a give and take, as you said, Tiffany. Basically, I can say like, I've got this, come here and have it. I mean, Wikipedia had that problem as well, that it was basically hammered by search bots, and then basically put like the Wikipedia content as a weighted model on Hugging Face, and told like, get it there, it's the same content, please stop hammering our website. It's like 50% traffic increase when the whole LLM thing started. And it's again, non-for-profit Wikipedia. It made no sense for them to actually have to pay for all that traffic, because weirdly enough, traffic still costs money, and people keep forgetting that.
Yeah. I read recently the Wikipedia puts out their annual what their kind of focus is going to be, and they draft it a year in advance and they publish it. And they have a really interesting, I mean, they're very aware of both how critical they are to this new world. I mean, so much of what we all consider to be kind of like good sources, it's all coming from Wikipedia. Google's been pulling stuff from them and showing it for a long time. They're fully aware that like the quality of that content is actually really fundamental to the utility of these tools, and yet they will get less and less credit. They will get less and less exposure. People won't go directly there and feel how they can edit it. Like, how to solve that problem of like actually being vital to this ecosystem and not being credited. I think that's a really interesting question. I think we all know that that's where so much of the data is coming from.
Yeah, of course.
How can they be compensated in a way that allows it to continue to thrive?
It might even a performance issue as well. Like if your site gets hammered by bots indexing it over and over again, and you wonder why your end user experience is slow as well, and you have to keep upgrading your hardware. And these are basically empty clicks, as you said. They're not actually something that sign up for your things, that are basically just like scraping and going on there. I found it very interesting. I found it interesting that Yahoo is still one of the most visited websites on the planet. It makes me really happy, because I worked for Yahoo and I loved it back then. And that that there is like a whole group of people that just use it as their starting page. I'm also working with a company in Berlin that does a lot of like outside advertising, like big billboards and stuff. And they have a portal called T-Online, which was like the internet provider here. And when you actually got your internet connectivity, you got a DVD or a CD back then, much like AOL, and you got online. And they still have all these users that basically are using Firefox because their own browser was Firefox based. And that's still like 80% of their traffic. And it's a few million users a day. And I'm just fascinated that these things still exist, and these things are still there. AOL still has dial-up users, and let's not forget that not everybody is always on the newest thing. But I found it very interesting that Yahoo keeps coming up because they also offered to buy Chrome if Google has to sell it, like because of the non-monopoly thing. It's quite interesting to see that it's still quite there on place 6. And
Yeah.
I
This
wouldn't have
whole list
expected
is interesting. This whole list
I'm
is
just looking
really
at it
interesting.
now.
Yeah.
Google,
Wow.
Here's
YouTube,
Wikipedia.
Facebook, Amazon, Reddit, Instagram, X.com, ChatGPT, Wikipedia. ChatGPT is really high up, isn't it? I didn't think it would be that high up yet. And then ESPN.com. Sports always works, I guess.
ESPN.com. People want to know day to day what's happening.
Zillow, like how many times do you buy and sell houses? Like this is really
Aspirational.
bizarre.
Yeah, people just looking for like, when I'm rich, when I'm a millionaire, I'll buy this house.
Well, I mean,
That
I'm
list
just
is
looking.
great.
This must exclude porn.
Yeah, every time it porn.
But that's just like lifestyle porn.
Oh, so I did some research, maybe last year, year before, and I wanted to look at the web research, right? First-hand research.
Sure.
I did some research into.
No.
I wanted to look at the overall trend in web performance for the top 100 domains on the web. And when I published the research, I had to obscure it. I crawled the HTTP archive for the top 100 domains, and it's very porny, and it's a lot of stuff that you've never heard of. I was like, what on earth is this? So yeah, this definitely excludes porn.
Well, there's also a lot of stuff that you don't see on like Chinese and Russian websites, like vk.com is like the Facebook of Russia, and that's huge.
I mean, this is America's most, and by that they mean the United States. But it would be interesting where those things fall too, because I mean, there are
now with France having like a porn blocker that basically says you have to prove your age, and other countries trying to do that as well. I mean, good luck with that. I mean, I had a few times offers to write like adult filters, and I'm like, that's basically my coding skills against the drive of every 14-year-old out there. So that's not going to be an easy thing to do.
Porn sites are starting to have a table with like, 260, 56 different videos, and each individual video makes up one big video. So they can't tell if it's porn, but it's just like a little corner of a video.
Yeah, I've put the screenshot in the. I mean, it's not a very interesting screenshot, but I put the screenshot in the chat, and nearly every single one of those domains is not safe for work, and it's all very non-US, non-Western centric. So when I say it's stuff you've never heard of, it's like, well, it's just stuff you've never heard of. It's really really quite interesting. The top 100 domains are nearly all not safe for work.
What's interesting,
I even ran it past somebody.
Some companies do a data block, like for example, Pornhub has this data block as well, where they just showed anonymized data about what people were searching for and these kind of things. So it was pretty interesting to see that.
Yeah, it skipped you way too far down for some reason. If you just scroll up a little bit more, there you go.
If you wait for it to load, it'll
so down a bit. It'll say automating crooks should be the So if you keep going down, it's going to be it's going to end up being a
there it is.
If you look how long those domains are,
yeah,
those are just the domains.
They're not full URLs. That's just domains. That gives you a rough idea of.
Wait, what?
A lot of these are numeric as well, because Latin keyboards for Asian and East Asian customers or web users You find a lot of the top 100 domains are actually numeric. You see that a lot, especially in the Chinese web, because of Latin keyboards and Western domains. So yeah, the top 100, if you just see that as it is blurred, you can tell that a lot of those aren't Facebook, Yahoo, etc.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's long domains. That's really hard to type in with one hand, isn't it? It's
That's why you make it your homepage, yeah?
it's just an accessibility feature. I'm saying I'm not saying anything else. But it's interesting when you look at like a lot of these things might have been not proper domains that have been hijacked and like hosted stuff on these domains. Like a lot of like Yahoo. When I worked for Yahoo Groups was full of adult content, although it wasn't meant to be. Like it was just a chance to actually script a bot to actually post things there and keep them there. Google Drive had the same problem in the beginning. There's like lots and lots of videos being hosted there. And I found the other day I saw this one that really cracked me up. That basically somebody wrote a script that basically simulates a CPU fan in a VM. So because people who try to take over your machine and malware that actually tries to find VMs to actually take over checks if there's a CPU, because then it's a desktop machine that's not worth it. Whereas like if it's a VM, it doesn't have a CPU. And then it's actually one thing that actually they want to take over. So instead of trying to defend their VM against takeover, they just basically pretended that it's a really terrible desktop machine. So they worked around the issue that way, and I found that incredibly clever.
That is so funny. That is so funny.
And even
this is what I'm talking about. You have to think in these weird ways.
Even better is this one, where basically what it says, like install a virtual keyboard that is actually Russian on your machine. So Russian hackers will not actually take over your machine because they think it's a machine in Russia.
Comrade.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
That was a very, very clever, simple way as well to actually get that one sorted out.
All of these hacks work for like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. Yeah. It's a bit like when you said, like when you were swearing at ChatGPT to give you information that it shouldn't give you. Like when it had at one time it said like it didn't show you resources where it got them from, and if you said like just give me the friggin' links, but not using friggin' but the other word, it would give you these links, but that only worked for a week as well.
Right.
I like the Wayback Machine now has in October 1 trillion web pages archived. I remember when I was in San Francisco and they showed me like the offices there, and they're like, okay, there was one desktop machine. They're like, that's the internet of 1996. That's basically all we indexed, because there was not much more online like that. But now you got like 1 trillion web pages archived. And it's interesting how the web archive, the Wayback Machine, became this hacker thing to just look at stuff that you forgot about. But then Google turned off Google Cache and basically said, like, use that one instead. Okay.
I donate to the Wayback Machine annually. Wikipedia, Wayback Machine, they get some donations from me.
Yeah,
things that I would be mad at myself if they went away.
Yeah, I should start with the Wayback Machine. I do Wikipedia, but I should start with the Wayback Machine as well.
Yeah.
One thing I found also interesting is somebody built a real life ad block for virtual for smart glasses.
Wasn't there like a video about this? Like there was a whole like conceptual video with all these overlaid ads a few years ago. Did you see that video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I didn't see that.
So that's an interesting one as well, where it detects if somebody is advertising. I mean, imagine going to New York to like Times Square. There's nothing left. You're just basically in a black square then.
I think the big black square, I think the big red squares are good for illustration, but could I have some like plants instead?
Yeah, something a bit more.
I heard, this is during 2020, I heard that an illustration, like a cartoon illustration of a plant will calm you down.
That's where the monetization comes in, where you can buy different templates and you can buy different skins for your blocker kind of thing. I'm actually surprised that nobody, I mean, a lot of electric cars play a sound when they actually start driving because so you don't run over people who can't see or things like that. And I'm actually surprised that there is no market for like ringtones for your car yet. that you could basically like make it sound like a 1960s Porsche or something. You know, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, I see. Okay, so not just like clown horn sound, but like.
Can you stop
Muscle
going
car.
in the adult direction? I mean, you're the one who brings us
No.
into the
I said
topic the whole time.
no.
What's going on here?
That's weird. That will be weird. My partner and I are learning bird noises. Bird noises. Do people say that? Bird calls? Yeah, we're learning bird calls this year, and we're getting pretty good at it, actually. Yeah.
What's the end game? Just move through the forest and.
What's the end game? You know what? I actually can tell you the middle game, which is happening, which is we started doing tree identification, and now we're doing birds. And when you start to know the names of different things, you experience everything in a little bit more high definition. Like you just see more colors of green, you see more shapes. And so when you can tell the difference between the different types of bird sounds, you start to hear them more in like it's not just like noise. You're like, oh, that's a goldfinch. Oh, that's
you're actually aware of it.
Yeah, you can kind of experience them more directly. And you notice like, oh, when you go to this park, they have a lot of nightingales, but if you go to this, lake, they have a lot of chiff-chaff. And you start to hear them. Anyway, this was about car noises. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's any research that you do and anything you get into. I mean, when you start getting into typography, you just look at signs completely different, and you find like wrong kernings everywhere, and you find these kind of grating things that normal people don't care about. But you're just like, okay, this is weird. Why is this a thing? Like, I mean, I keep seeing great graffiti here in the area, and I used to write graffiti myself, and I was like, this is so cool. And when I moved to Berlin, I was just like, HSBC is such a huge crew here. They're graffitiing everything. And then I realized it's actually the football club here, Hertha BSC.
Of course.
And I did not know that. In England, I haven't seen that ever, that like lots of people do graffiti for football clubs. But in Germany, it's huge. Every city you go to is like completely plastered with really good graffiti saying the name of the football club. It's really weird.
Oh, interesting. Don't know. Yeah, I've not really seen that.
I mean, this is interesting, that sign thing that Americans are very excited about. Like, it's quite interesting that they do this like little graphic-y thing to, I guess it's a school thing that you do there.
So Julia Evans, which is whose site this is, she's been doing this for a while. And
she's so smart.
Yeah, and she puts out she spends a lot of time developing the content and making it approachable and fun on these different topics. And like, I'm sure all of us are going to learn something from that zine. And then she charges, a sort of semi-reasonable rate. You can get it for yourself or your whole team. And it's basically an alternative to like blog posts. I mean, it's, I guess it's harder to steal than Harry's CSS and performance tips. So yeah, she's been doing this for a while. And she hires illustrators like, I don't know for sure, but I think that she's hired an illustrator to do that work, and she has other contributors. So yeah.
I think that's really cute. It's a really good, like, crafty, old school thing to do. And I mean, I just been to a wedding last week, and they asked us to do one of those wedding bingo things, and it was basically a German family and a Turkish family, and the German family was also like students and old people. And I'm like, okay, so what the hell do I do now? So basically all these things that you downloaded on Etsy was like, okay, just in German or in English. And then I needed one with pictures on it. So I was ready to do the bingo in like German and English and then French if need be, and have somebody else do the Turkish bit. And then we never got to it. But what it taught me was like, as soon as printers are needed, they die on you, those bastards. Like basically we tried to print them out, and like no way. So I had to go to a copy store and pay like €50 for like 100 color printouts that we didn't use in the end. And I was just like, this is so bad for the environment and for my mental health to not do these kind of things. But physical bits, I just want to get rid of them. It feels very bizarre. But that kind of artsy stuff is another story. But just printing those things out to be thrown away felt like really weird.
Yeah, I think that like also for these kinds of materials, I mean, when I'm on my phone and I'm reading an article, I'm like, my thumb is moving constantly. I'm just like scan, 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 something like that. You like take a second, you sit down, you slow down. It's just, I think that, you know, people are craving that not everything is the other side of a piece of glass.
Yeah.
And I think she's even been doing this for a long time, but I think it's also just like a different mode to engage with things. Just like a talk in person is a different mode to engage with something, you know?
Yeah, no, I come across Julia's stuff infrequently, and every time I do, I'm just like so impressed by her ability to take really quite broad topics and make them very palatable, but also make them enjoyable.
Her Git stuff is really,
She's
really
very
good. She has
intelligent.
so many great posts on explaining Git to people. It's just really
Mhm.
wonderful. I mean, we're totally over time, but we also got like a lot of people with, here on watching at the moment, so that's kind of cool. So let's go
Nice.
through some tools quickly. I mean, there's this slimming images, and there's quite a few of those that I've seen. Like Adi Osmani has one, and that I use Image Optim. But it's quite fun that you can do these things in the browser nowadays. I guess they use WebAssembly in the background to use PNG Crush or something like that. But just like uploading the images, you know, having this app offered to me in Chinese scares me again now. But that might be just me. But it's interesting that it pulls out EXIF data and it actually makes the picture smaller in the browser, and you can see immediately what you can save. And we lost Tiffany. Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh,
I'm back.
she's back. She's back.
Yeah.
I think so I mean, obviously this is good for one-off things, you know, if you're a social media exec and you need to do a one-off. But I wish people cared more about they upload images to a website to get it compressed. Like, well, that website has just stripped out your EXIF metadata. So that website could know exactly where you've uploaded, or certainly where the picture was taken. And again, it's quite low risk in general, but I think that lack of literacy among non-technical folk, where they will just upload an image to a website, get it compressed, or have the background removed. And it's like, if that had any identifying data, which photos often do, don't they? So I like the idea that this can run fully sandbox in the browser. You could even turn your Wi-Fi off and it would work. But I just worry that the market is too small because people, in general, just don't know enough or know that they should care about this stuff.
I guess the impact would be if WordPress built it in. Like that's the kind of stuff where it kind of does. It resizes it to several sizes, but it's the optimization bit is not there yet. Because I think that's the biggest issue. I remember when like providers in England, like mobile phone providers, would like slim down your JPEG banners to like 10% quality, and it makes basically just a big mess in the end. But like that was basically when it was trickier to pay for the traffic by the providers themselves. But I like the idea. PNG also has an update to the spec this week as well. It now supports EXIF fully, which it didn't before. I didn't know that. Only JPEG was the one that supported EXIF completely. And now PNG does it, and the animated PNG is now completely supported as well. So it's interesting to keep up to date on these different video image formats. But WebP was, for ages, it was bad because it couldn't preview it in macOS. You basically had to open it in the browser to see the image, but now Preview supports WebP as well. And AVIF is the other format. I mean, you can take a lot out and make these images smaller, but most people will just take a screenshot and save it if you're lucky. Otherwise, you get a Word document with an embedded image that you actually have to save.
The amount, like the default macOS screenshot image titling is like capital letters screenshot space and then like a non-ISO time standard. The amount of audits I've done for client sites where the CMS users have just screenshotted a photo of a product and uploaded that. It's like, wow.
I mean, it was a good image search, but also DSIM0001, which is like the first picture somebody took on a digital camera. So there was like really funny things found that way as well.
Yeah.
I like that custom element for color highlighting as well. Oh, I shouldn't have uploaded it to the upload box here. So, because that is something I'm still using, a very, very old thing in WordPress to do syntax highlighting, which creates tons of spans and like really, really bad quality. And apparently this one does a really good job in creating color highlighting your code in your browser on client side. And just the HTML is just very much a pre-tag, I think, or a code tag. And more of that, please. I really want to not to see like screenshots of code being published.
Yeah, I think this must be months and months ago. I saw a proof of concept of this on Hacker News. So this must be a tidied up, sort of componentized, packaged version, which is very nice to see.
Yeah, there's like a demo playground as well where you can. That is the demo playground. And yeah, it's. I mean, that makes sense to put into your systems. And I mean, in the past, we also have like editors like Monocode embeddable, so you can make that editable as well. Just make sure if you make anything editable, it will also be XSS vulnerable. So basically, there was this old trick where it's like making a CSS style when people use HTML slides, they had like a style element and made it content editable. And publishing those was basically opening your server to any kind of attack. It was really a bad idea. It looked funny, it looked great, but it really was a bad idea.
I didn't realize that was exploitable.
Yeah, and this is on GitHub, available to you to actually play. So there are no spans here defining language tokens.
Whoa! This is fascinating. Sorry, I just right-clicked and looked at this is fascinating. Is it? Wow. I need to know more about how this works. Yeah. I need to. Is it like loading a canvas? Like, how is this?
So I don't know how the custom highlight API works, but yeah,
I'll look at it later.
Yeah.
No, we go through the code now and actually take a look at what it does.
Yeah, it's got this syntax highlight component tag, and everything's in there.
Oh, it uses Prism under the hood. It uses Prism and the Prism language component.
Cool.
This is cool fun. I like that. We talked about Leah Baru earlier. Like, she did some good web components for Blue Sky as well with your likes and likers. And I found that quite cute as well, that actually you just do a web component for that, because that's what they're meant to be for, and people don't use web components enough. Although, I mean, I talked about that before, that like those a lot of people on the Fediverse go like completely crazy about showing all these people who liked it as an image, and I always find that really wasteful and unnecessary. Like, I mean, Harry, you as a performance person, like loading shitloads of images because they liked it, does this feel like a worthwhile thing to do?
I don't think it feels worthwhile.
It's a bit of a loaded question.
It's one of those things, like the percentage of people who are going to interact with this is very, very low. Just like eagerly loading product reviews, like wait until someone actually asks to see it before you load them. Same with stuff like this. That's a lot of images. Yeah, I mean, they're going to amount to probably less than a megabyte, hopefully, what we're seeing on screen there. But it does seem.
But doesn't it encourage like people who get a lot of likes to continue to post content? Like, doesn't it kind of feed the whole thing? Like, I mean, there's probably other ways to feed that kick without sacrificing your performance.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you lazy load it and you load it with like a interaction observer, then fine, it's going to be a thing, and probably it is. But I never understood it on Tumblr either. Like when you had like these thousands of things, or when you go to like Discord and people just put like 50,000 emoji on your post, and I'm like, what do I do with these 600 unicorns now?
I'm having flashbacks to when Facebook had apps in the sidebar. And then you'd have like one or two friends who would have like 100 different apps installed. And every time you would go to their profile, like Facebook would crash. Do you remember these days?
Yeah.
You could like connect all these ridiculous apps. And then they finally were like, this isn't working out for most users. Yeah.
Well, it's a bit like when you get people to do, like, my computer is slow, and you take a look at it, and you're like, you got 5 different virus scanners running and competing for scanning your hard drive the whole time. Like, it's not surprising that it doesn't do it. But I mean, it's great to show off, and you're right, it might be an incentive for people to post more if they get more likes and views and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I also get it on my WordPress. I mean, I turned off comments years ago, but I still get now a lot of like Fediverse pingbacks where people like, somebody posted this, somebody reposted that, and I'm like, yeah, sure, but what? I don't know. Maybe I'm just spoiled because I had been successful on social media for a long time, so I don't look at these things anymore.
Yeah, it's all a bit vanity, isn't it?
Yeah. This is also interesting. That's a tool that is a Claude usage monitor that actually shows you like how many tokens and how many times to reset you had when you're using the LLM, the code editor, the AI code component, whatever it's called. And it's like, yeah, that's an interesting one where basically you could see your tokens going away and how much it costs you to actually use that thing and weigh it against the benefit of having used it. I think that's something that should be more transparent in all of these tools.
Yeah. And also, I'm sure there's a way to do this, but I feel like I want to toggle on and off these autocompletes and stuff, because most of the time, not maybe most of the time, but there's portions of the time where I know what I'm typing. I don't need this, and it's just wasteful that it's generating it all the time.
So you can do it down here in GitHub Copilot. That basically allows you to turn it on and off if you want to. So that's pretty easy and transparent. There's also a keyboard shortcut for it.
I was writing an article in Markdown yesterday in Vim, and I've got Copilot hooked up to Vim. And I just started talking. I started typing this blog post, and it started trying to churn out, like trying to guess what we're trying to talk about, and it found it so infuriating. I'm like, no, I know what I'm here to talk about. You don't. So yeah, it's one of those things where I have it turned off by default. Otherwise, it would just run through so many tokens.
Google just released a CLI LLM code completion code agent thing, and that basically runs in your terminal. And there's a lot of posts about it, how cool that is. But there's a lot of in the security community and also in the privacy community and Linux community, people are going bonkers about it because it basically indexes your whole traffic of your terminal. Like basically it sent it all to Google in the background, and like they have to make sure that they have to get a better way of actually sorting this out, because it's really a privacy issue.
Yeah, well, I read a post by someone because privacy and the security in terms of like, just bricking your own machine. But I read a post by a guy who said that for about a week now, he's just had it running just completely autonomous with bypass all permissions. So it doesn't, it's allowed to sudo things, it's allowed to run as root. And he allowed it to run for a week, and he said he didn't regret a thing. He said it went fine. But I can see that going pretty bad pretty quick when it does.
I think the NPM thing was quite interesting as well. Like if you do Lodash here, and you can basically see which other dependencies are there. That has no dependencies. Okay. I don't know what else is a thing to do.
Moment.
Anyway. Huh?
No, nothing. I was just saying Moment.js, but that probably is standalone as well.
Let's try. No, also 0 dependencies. Okay, so that basically is a good visualization of your NPM dependencies that I'm now failing at completely because I'm not doing that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. I love the one that is like is even and is odd.
Oh no.
This basically is just running a modulo back, and I think the is even is also dependent on is odd. Yeah, the is even is dependent on is odd because it returns not is odd.
Yeah, so it's just an exercise. It's just an exercise in over-engineering. This was satire.
That's dependent on is number. That's dependent on time. Like, it's amazing.
Over microization, which is a real debate that you get in with people about, like, oh, it should do one thing. Well, what's one thing enough?
There's one also that, that's not what I wanted. There's also an interesting one where somebody did like 7 different coding agents.
This
And
was
let
really
them
interesting.
work against each other and like build a website. And it always cracks me up when it says like build a website and then it creates a React 10,000 component thing, and you're like, that's not a website, but okay. And I like the one was basically completely failing to do anything that was displaying in the browser, although it created tons and tons of dependencies. So yeah, it's interesting to see the different ones. Oh, I hate these pop-ups.
You know, I don't really write code anymore. I haven't done for years. So maybe this is a good time to get back into it because someone else can do it all for me. I haven't needed to, I haven't been asked to, I haven't been required to write code for so long.
I think it's probably useful to do something like what this person has done, where you pick a small project and try out these different environments in order for you to sort of see firsthand how people are experiencing this new workflow. I found it really educational and insightful, and it's also kind of fun. It is a little bit like working with a junior developer, though. And this is actually what there was. I pulled a quote out of this one because I liked it, which was, "The hot new programming language is English." Right? That idea that how you craft your description, what constraints you put onto the prompt, are going to give you the best outcome. You know?
It's quite interesting though that like prompt engineering was heralded as this thing for every engineer to do to basically stay relevant in the AI world, and now prompt engineering is actually done better by LLMs than by humans. So
right, but the prompt engineering of like that is true. But what I'm talking about is like when you generate code with one of these tools, if you just say like import this spreadsheet and produce a web page. I mean, part of the exercise was to see what it would do. But the more explicit you are about what you intend in English, the much better an outcome you're going to have. So, you know, if Harry knows to pay a lot of attention to performance, he's going to put in like, don't use this, do that, and like your experience, you're going to put into your prompt. And then you're going to get a more performant, better to use site than somebody who doesn't understand this limitations that they are just letting the system, you know, blow past.
I guess that's like engineering with AI instead of vibe coding. Like, you know, just basically like, I don't care what the code is, just basically give me something rather than like, I want this explicitly.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the big joke, wasn't it? Like when you said like AI is only as good as people asking the right questions, and having worked with customers for years and years, people are not good in asking the right questions or knowing what they actually want.
No, and you also need to review the result. You also need to look at the code and say, you're using this thing. You need to be a good code reviewer. And lots of people don't like reading code.
Well, this is why I've sort of, even though I don't, like I said, I don't really write code anymore, but if things, because everyone's like, oh, AI is going to take your job. It's like, well, AI should replace typing. It should never replace coding. You still need to think like a coder. You still need to think about a bit like an architect. You still need to think a bit like a systems designer. You need to be very clear with your instructions and your spec, and you need to know when it's veered from that path. If an AI could actually replace your job, you're just a typist at this point.
And here's the thing:
you're just typing.
On top of those skills, you also need to be able to clearly articulate your ideas. And there are really high-level, competent engineers who haven't learned that skill because they just choose not to mentor more junior people. And it's those people who
do it alone.
Yeah, and so you need to be able to really articulate. And so one of the things I found is I find it very difficult to pair program together with a person and the environment, because we're not in a three-way conversation. But I am trying to have a conversation with this machine who's also trying to make suggestions that I have to read. And so what my partner has started doing is actually like speaking their instruction to Claude.
Interesting.
And like
which a lot of people are super excited about, but it's fun because it doesn't scale, because you do it in an office with like 50 people. That's but yeah, I guess the mindset change of like speaking rather than typing is completely different, because that's like real pair programming when you sit next to each other and you say like, why did you do that? And then you have a conversation rather than like coding together and typing only that. So I think that's where it comes in to become more human-ish as you want to. We had this the last time on the show as well. It's quite fascinating that like listening is actually so much. No, speaking is so much faster than writing, but listening is so much slower than reading, because we have to do it
do
differently.
one more process.
The processing is completely different. It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
So we've gone over the allotted time, and so I'm just wondering how we're gonna.
I guess we should finish up in a second, and like I mean, there's a congress to be organized. So next week, Tiffany is going to come to be in Berlin.
Be in Berlin, yeah.
Harry is not going to come, sadly enough, I guess. But like the World Congress happening, 15,000 people. One thing that I just put to my colleagues together, and I'm very, very excited about, is that we have these duckies that we actually give out to people at the conference. And I just basically made mine a way to actually communicate with people. So if you actually take the ducky and you put it on your phone, it actually sends an email. And the way to do that is an NFC sticker that you can buy like 50 pack of them for like 10 euros. And you can store whatever you want on them. And there's a free app on Android to read and write the NFC tag. So I'm going to wreak havoc with those things in my neighborhood as well when people randomly put their phones on things.
Yeah.
I have an idea for next year's ducky, but I don't want to. Maybe I'll just tell you it in person. Then.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much for this long conversation. This was great, and we have lots of stuff that we went through. Again, thank you for your time. Any last things that you want to have the audience from WeAreDevelopers to care about, to talk about? Anything you want to throw out there for people to chew over, Harry?
One thing that's on my mind a little bit at the moment, because I've said it to a client recently, and it's nothing to do with what we've just spoken about, but one thing if I was trying to give a message is, if you want a fast website, just go ahead and build one. Clients, just don't wait to email me. If you're building a website, just make it fast.
Interesting. Like, yeah, I mean, and don't just let it be built for you by somebody else that tells you it's going to be fast.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I've dealt with. I've dealt with a client recently where they never made performance part of their spec for their provider, their supplier. So then the site wasn't fast, and it's like, well, you shouldn't really need to say it out loud. But if you do want a fast website, just make sure it's known that's what you want, and you're probably going to end up with one.
Cool. Tiffany, any news from you? Anything you want people to care about?
I would just say, if you're going to be in Berlin next week, I'd love to have a conversation about any of the stuff we've talked about or whatever is on your mind. I think something that is on my mind is, how do we evaluate, to the topic we just talked about, how do you evaluate a new engineer coming into your company in a way that like recognizes these new skills that I described, that isn't the old way we do things? And how do you make sure that the person you have coming in is, I don't want to say AI first, because I don't think you necessarily need to be, but like making sure that they have these new skills, because I think we have this old way of evaluating. And if anybody has got hands-on experience with changing the way they do interviews, I'd love to have a conversation about it.
I mean, there is a whole HR leader summit as part of
I saw that, yeah.
Well. So there's like lots of HR people to talk to, and I mean, most of them don't bite. So that's actually quite good. So we can actually breach that wall between engineering and HR that way. Well, that was WeAreDevelopers Live for today. Thanks very much for watching. The recording will be available on our watch section again. Thanks, Harry. Thanks, Tiffany. And hope to see you next week live at the Congress, where the next show, the live show, will be live in the sun, where this red hat is going to be covered in like lots of sunscreen. I hope to see you then next week in Berlin. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
All right.